Hey folks, and welcome to a Daily Ratings podcast. It's a show where each week we'll sit down with Vincent Daly to get his thoughts on the latest movies he's been watching, both older films and new releases. And don't worry, there's no spoilers. Vince will give a brief review of the movie, share some thoughts, and of course, then rate the film. The Daily Ratings are always fair, honest, and most importantly, they're consistent. On today's show, Vince will be rating and reviewing The Barkleys of Broadway, directed by Charles Walters, Pretty in Pink by Howard Deutsch, Antman, Antman and the Wasp, and finally newly released Antman and the Wasp Quantumania, all directed by Peyton Reed. It's going to be a great show, folks, so stay tuned and enjoy. Mr. Vincent Daly, how's it going, buddy?
Thomas, how's it going?
It's going okay for me. How was your Ant-Man-filled week?
Filled with ants.
A lot of Paul Rudd.
a lot of Michael Douglas, which is not a
lot of
bad
Michael
thing.
Douglas.
Yeah.
It can be bad.
Right.
We'll get into that, though.
Yeah. I mean, I would say it was a shell shock coming back to Marvel this week. I don't know what it was. This week it was really pulling teeth to watch these Marvel films again, and I'm not even saying like Ant-Man was terrible. It felt like, I don't know. Coming off of the very structured weeks, it was just a lot to go back to that Marvel writing style, the Marvel kitsch, the jokiness.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
So it just took me a minute to kind of get settled in again.
It kind of sucks overall. I mean, right?
Kind of really sucks.
It kind of really sucks.
But I did enjoy these movies this week. If anything, Michael Douglas was a highlight in all three of the Ant-Mans. So
Okay. I can't wait to disagree with you later in the episode.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Interesting. He's been doing some Marvel watching himself.
Yeah, boy, Marvel. It's funny. I was putting stuff on the site and thinking about how in my opinion, the last great year of movies was 2007.
That's a hot take.
Is it a hot take?
I mean, yeah.
If you had to get really,
I mean,
if you think if I gun to your head right now,
okay,
I think that makes the most sense. Do you have anything better?
Maybe like what year was like Birdman and whatnot?
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
What was that, 2014, 2016?
Yeah, I'm thinking 2014, but
Can you name another thing with Birdman?
No, not off
I think it was just Birdman and Whiplash.
Yeah.
Two great movies.
Sure.
But I'm talking about like 2007 was a great year for film.
Oh, absolutely.
It's no coincidence that the next year, 2008, is when the first Iron Man came out. Which, generally speaking, we like the first Iron Man.
Right.
But
it was
we had no idea
the first Horseman
of the manila folder, vanilla pudding trash that was to ensue.
For real.
But I'll tell you what. First, let's finish up here. Wait, no, this is second to last week.
Second to last week. Yep.
Okay. Oh, we have.
So we got one more. I know. I was tripped up too.
You think February is such a short month? Not as far as Fred Astaire's concerned.
Fred's got it in.
All right, so we got a couple more here, but this is Fred Astaire. This is the Barkleys of Broadway.
Yep.
It's 1949, and 10 years that Ginger Rogers and Fred Astaire didn't work together after working together so much. They come together finally. It's 1949, kind of late for Fred's career a little bit, but they came back and they did this. We see some familiar faces. How was the Barkleys of Broadway?
Yeah. I mean, the big hook, and you hit the nail on the head, Tom, the big hook here is the reuniting of Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers back together after a 10-plus year hiatus, and also dancing together the last time on film here. This is the last one. So in the 7 or 8 films we've covered of Fred on the podcast so far, This is his most famous dancing partner. She's been missing from all the films we covered, and
Right.
I think there is a reason for that, for what we will touch on eventually with Fred. But folks, if you've been kind of tracking some of these movies, the writing is on the wall for which ones will make up the essential special list, and a lot of those include Ginger Rogers. She is a tremendous talent, and I mean, besides composing or choreographing her own sequences like Fred does, and Fred's middle career is populated with. He really has these kind of, these not high concept, but these really exciting, adventurous type of dance sequences. Yeah. Ginger is just as good of a dancer as him. She just doesn't get into that next stage where she's choreographing herself, from what I've researched at least.
Okay, all right.
For now, the Barkleys of Broadway covers a husband and wife performing duo, and of course that is played by Astaire and Rogers. They are king of queen of the musical comedy, and it's kind of interesting because this film has both a kind of a meta quality to it, because they really are the king and queen of being these dance partners, but they also play that in the story as well. That is kind of a wedge being forced in between them as Ginger wants to pursue a dramatic acting career. This means breaking up their long-running act and putting the relationship on the rocks, and that's basically our setup here.
Okay.
Not exactly the love at first sight or love at first dance story that Astaire is so used to and so comfortable as a boot.
Yeah, you always say, I didn't think I loved them, and now I love them.
Yes, which is like a good 60% of every one of these movies.
So right off the bat, did this have a different flavor? And you were like, oh, this is new. I like this.
It is. It's a bit, it's definitely musical comedy, don't get me wrong, but it is a little bit more dramatic and a little bit more meaningful in the arc, which I enjoyed quite a bit.
Okay.
It was a good switch up, and maybe that's just this being a little bit later. I mean, 49's not super late, but
no.
It's
for his dancing career, for Fred on film, kind of. Yeah,
absolutely. So,
now, it's what doesn't really come up much. We're talking about Fred Astaire is, and even back before the podcast, for when we working on the master list and everything like that, his actual acting doesn't come up much because it's so about the dance numbers. Yeah. So do we get more range from him because it's more dramatic?
I think so. And much like we touched on last year, we covered a film called Holiday Inn.
Yeah, of course.
Where Fred was more of an antagonist.
That's right.
He kind of is semi-antagonist as well. Rogers has these aspirations to go into dramatic acting and step away and grow. And obviously, his character is kind of wearing his feelings on his sleeve. He's very sensitive to that. Mm-hmm. For comedic purposes, for being he doesn't want to let her go. But also, in a little bit of a flawed way as well, he's holding her back, and the film definitely doesn't hide away from casting Fred in a selfish light. Right. Not emotionally abusive or anything like that, but definitely holding Ginger back from what she has as aspirations and dreams.
That's probably enjoyable, especially if you watching so many Fred movies.
Yeah.
Just to see a different stereotype.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny, though, because I really don't like seeing my boy not be the knight in shining armor,
Okay.
And what's so weird is I experience this, and I don't really experience that with anyone else. I love villains. I want everyone to be a bad guy.
It's so true.
Go back to last week with Matthew McConaughey. I love when actors I like become villains, but...
Fred Astaire, and if Mr. Rogers was ever a villain, it would upset you.
Exactly. Don't touch
That's kind
him.
of funny. Yeah. I would almost say I have that with John Wayne.
Yeah.
But then again, not really, because The Searchers, in my opinion, is so great. And, Martin Scorsese's opinion, and all the top guys, except for one across the table here.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, how many times has I given Searchers a shot?
But the point is, a lot. But we'll deal with that in the future. For John Wayne special. But the point is, I don't know if it's something about these old school guys that we learned to love on film, but it's also a thing of, in Hollywood back then, where always the good guy, not a lot of great characters. It's good or bad.
Absolutely.
And our good boys are our good boys.
Absolutely.
But that's cool that you got to see some range out of Fred.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there's a lot of bickering back and forth between this one, and like I said, it's at a little bit of the detriment of Fred's character, but I think where this evolves from, or where this kind of elevates the writing and the arc of Fred's character, is that there's an arc at all. It's not sunshine and daisies by the end. This film kind of balances that, which is already off the bat kind of puts it at a higher caliber than most, I would say. Definitely. Most of Fred's other, musical comedies. What I didn't expect is that good arc, and most of this is really going to give Ginger the time on screen to shine. And I think, again, just how there's an interesting quality to the storyline being that they are the king of queen of musical comedy and kind of splitting up over this as well. Ginger has this approach to dramatic acting, which I think is great. I like seeing her more on screen. Mm-hmm. I didn't really do a research into where her career goes after this, but I think it's very interesting that we have this story positioned as in the marketing back in the day as a reuniting of these two talents, and then the story itself kind of taking on a quality that they're going to be splitting up, and this is going to be the last time we see them, on film together, basically. A very interesting time capsule for that reason, which was my comment last with Ziegfeld Follies.
I think it's pretty cool, and it's almost a shame. She continues to act, but I don't think she's anything. She's not in anything quite explosive.
Right.
And then toward later career, like TV stuff and things like that.
Sure.
It's kind of funny that we're still only talking about the 40s. Like, we're not even in the 50s with these people. It's funny.
Yeah. And there's plenty of, talent to go as far as that. But yeah, I found it really interesting that we have this story not robbing Ginger's character of her aspirations and dreams. And even though this film very much is a comedy, don't get me wrong, it is a musical comedy first and sprinklings of drama.
Right.
Those sprinklings of drama made it more realistic and felt quite modern despite being in 1949. I felt it was much more of a modern spin, much more of a realistic spin as well to relationships as well. They're already established as husband and wife in this, and I felt like this was, again, just a little bit more bold, a little bit more realistic than what we usually get, which is
Sunshine and Rainbows.
Sunshine and Rainbows, such a gold line of Hollywood, of show business. They're always working performers in these films as characters, so it was interesting. Let's finish with some notable numbers here. Not a dance number, but composer-actor Oscar Levant is an absolute maestro on the piano.
Okay.
He has two main performances here, which are just largely uncut and flat-out impressive. Wow. There is no doubt he's playing this himself, and really stellar performances on the piano. Every moment that Fred and Ginger are dancing together is really dynamite. If anything, as a slight negative, just very slight, they look so happy and so joyous to be dancing together on screen. It almost contrasts what's happening in the story a little bit, because they're supposed to be a little bit on the rocks in the story with this fight.
But is there something to be said to that? They're professionals.
Oh, maybe.
They go out, they get it done, and then as soon as the curtains are closed, they're just they're fighting.
Yeah, right. I like that perspective.
Almost like a Desi Arnaz and Lucille Ball. No, I Love Lucy.
Not Lucille Ball. It is Lucy, but
that's funny. We can't. But you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely.
Trouble behind scenes.
Yeah, but they put on a good face.
Exactly.
They're professionals. Yeah. There's a great rehearsal number that just oozes the chemistry that they have on screen, and there's just such a playfulness to their tap dancing that always is on point. You can really see the joy in their eyes performing together again, and it's a very, very special number. This rehearsal number, almost like 30 minutes in. Fred also has a solo act, Shoes with Wings, that is so fantastic. Really a top tier performance.
Was this one we would all recognize if we didn't see the movie? Is this one of his classics, or kind of not so much?
Tough to say. I think I'm a bad judge just because I've research Fred Astaire so much, you know what I mean? I kind of in the deep cut territory for what's his best performances. But
next February, the book will just come out from you.
Right. I would love nothing more. That would be great. He's playing a shoe repair shop guy, and all the tap shoes kind of get possessed and come alive. And they do this cool, not green screen, but this editing that obviously there's all dancers filling the shoes, but they get in post production kind of drawn out,
airbrushed out or whatever the technique is.
Right. Back in 49, whatever they were doing. Man, it is so good. It's such a good concept, such good storytelling in the dance itself. Just a classic example of how he can take a concept and execute choreography that is actually fun to watch.
Yeah,
like it is a delight to watch it unfold.
Very cool.
I just loved it to death. I thought this was an excellent film, though. Dynamic in its drama, packed to the brim with great dance numbers. And honestly, folks, if you haven't given any of these Astaire films a shot, this might be a great start, regardless of being the closing chapter between this legendary duo. We're going to go ahead and give the Barkleys of Broadway a 76.
Oh, geez, that's a really good score.
It's up there.
Yeah, that is getting up there for Astaire movies.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think I was looking back. I think it was the best scoring Fred Astaire movie we've covered on the podcast so far.
Yes, on the podcast. Yes.
Right,
yep.
right.
There's still from that masterless kind of that we might want to do something special with, or down the road, or we'd have plenty more to Fred Astaire.
Absolutely.
Believe it or not, but there's a lot from the guy.
Believe it or not, he's a working actor. He's getting it done.
76, Barkleys of Broadway.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was good. And that's where I even say, like, even though it's odd in how it's positioned with this ending chapter of Astaire and Rogers, I think, if anything, it has so much good in it. It might be a good jumping off point for a lot of people that haven't
that's
given
pretty
this a
cool. I
shot.
like that a lot.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. And I'll tell you what, just goes to show, if you're pre-50s, that doesn't mean there's a reason to go back and watch some of these old films.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It might not feel the same as when watching them for the first time, of course, but even this many years later, they're still good movies, still good cinema. Really cool. And this is color, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to jump ahead. This is 1986. We're still in our John Hughes study. This is film number 3 that we're covering.
Yep.
This is Pretty in Pink, and John Hughes is writing this one, not directing.
Yeah.
Unlike the last two with Breakfast Club and 16
Candles.
16 Candles,
Yep,
right?
yep.
So Pretty in Pink, kind of what's our premise here? Set us up a little bit, and how'd you like it?
Sure. So Pretty in Pink is a pretty by the numbers teen romance. The final destination is prom. It's kind of set up as a love triangle, but isn't really a love triangle. So again, I was looking at this and I was saying, wow, how, this is a blueprint for so much to come as far as kind of a teen romance approach to it. I think the key thing with Pretty in Pink is that it is pulling itself from older styles of storytelling, basically a love across the train tracks. I would say probably the most notable example is going to be a West Side Story, which in itself lends from a Romeo and Juliet. You know what I mean? It's all shoulders of giants. So
it's funny. That's one of your first comments you made.
Yeah.
It was one of big Roger Ebert.
Really?
Roger Ebert gave it like 3 stars, but his main criticism was that as he something like repetitive plot.
Yeah.
However, it was executed well, something like that.
Right.
But that was his main gripe with it as well.
Yeah, it's oozing style. I mean, it may be a tale as old as time as far as a romance go, but it is drenched in 80s. So it kind of has its own identity when it comes to that.
I mean, does it have just the fingerprint still of a John Hughes? I mean, he loves dealing with younger actors.
Yeah.
He loves dealing with these teen stories. I mean, even Pretty in Pink, the final kind of act was prom, correct?
Yeah.
Or some type of school dance at least at night.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting at the Breakfast Club, which was the last thing that we did last week, you said how original it was and how no one's really touched it since a little bit.
Yeah.
And here we're dealing with something very, very common that we've seen the story before.
Absolutely.
But how does it play out for his writing and everything like that?
I think it's good. I mean, John Hughes is basically continuing with his pet actor, Molly Ringwald, for the last time as well. He has basically, you call it the Molly trilogy or something like that, But it's really our only entry in the study that he only wrote. He didn't direct this one, as you said in the beginning. All the more, I think I felt it was important to highlight this because I still think, I mean, all of these movies, they are so iconic. you can see them almost as bulletproof, but my job is to review them with fresh eyes, and I don't know if this drenched in 80s really pays off, on how not generic, I don't want to say generic, but straightforward this type of romance is.
Yeah, or execution too.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, because like even things you praised about Breakfast Club was the originality of it.
Yeah.
Things that weren't good was kind of the writing and big time the acting as well.
Yeah, big time the acting.
Yeah.
When it comes to this, Pretty in Pink is an edgy hipster teen romance. And like I said, it initially feels like a love triangle, but is actually not a love triangle. It's more of a romance duo with two toxic best friends, and that's where you can kind of see the shapings of a West Side Story. Our main romance is between Molly Ringwald and Andrew McCarthy. Real quick. I couldn't even find a good spot to put this in.
Okay.
Real quick comic with Andrew McCarthy. Unfortunately, I saw this, I laughed at it, and I couldn't see anything else. He looks like Tucker Carlson in this film. He's got these sad eyes.
That's hilarious.
these worried.
That's hilarious.
Newscaster eyes. So I don't know. I hope not to curse anyone to see that same. Not that, I mean, he's not. Andrew McCarthy isn't really, working too much now. He was in like Orange is the New Black, I think. So. But I could not get it out of my head.
Funny. That's pretty good.
It is the classic love from opposite sides of the tracks, like we said. We have seen this constant times, but when it comes to this, it's just how 80s. I mean, it is dialed up past 11. That is how 80s this thing is. Drenched is the note. On Molly's side, we have John Cryer playing, honestly, the creepiest clinger in the world ever put on film. And on Andrew's side, we have James Spader in a role that will make you question if he's a high schooler or a drug crime lord. James Spader
sounds amazing.
Is insane in
That's
this.
the one hook I think you
to get people to watch. I'll tell you. I mean, James Spader was not a disappointment here.
Oh, good. Okay, definitely a big cast.
Yeah,
I mean, John Cryer, if that rings any bells, he's a guy who's done
2.5 Men.
2.5 Men for how many years? Yeah, and a young James Spader, right?
Oh, absolutely. I don't know
everybody's
how
pretty young,
but yeah, definitely. Or way before he was doing anything like with Stargate or some of the sci-fi he was acting in. So.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, he's still like 100% James Spader. Like he's been the same person.
That's awesome.
His entire life.
That's cool.
Like we said, the destination for the story is senior prom, and in that itself, it's fairly generic. Speaking honestly, I really flip-flopped through the room, watching the entire film on if the huge style of the film has enough to mask a age-old generic teen rom-com. But I cannot overstate how distilled the 80s is in this film. I mean, top to bottom, it is maxed out. The soundtrack, I would say, is a big highlight for me. All new wave and perfectly moody, and I think really not only being a time capsule for what was playing at the time, and that's not something I really give points to. I think its originality and being a soundtrack for these kind of misfit, hipster characters, I felt it was very appropriate.
I mean, that's kind of surprising because what can make a movie such 80s and drenched in 80s is the music.
Sure.
So I guess that's good. Did it feel like 80s, but it wasn't that, I don't know, generic guitar and...
It felt like an 80s movie that a hipster chose the soundtrack to, which these characters are hipsters or before hipsters.
Okay.
They're hip. They're just hip. So, yeah, I mean, I think a positive as well alongside of that style is just how hyper stylized the fashion is. Every single character has a layer of character on top of their acting, and it's done by this wardrobe. Poor kids will have all these mix-match hipster outfits with funky clashing patterns, while the rich kids are covered in loose-fitting designer clothes and soft powdery colors. It's a really easy way that you can see, the us versus them type of mentality that's going on here. Let's talk about performances, and I'll start with the black eye on the film. John Cryer is... real bad. I did not like him at all in this. He's extremely grating character as Ducky. Ducky plays the clinger, or Ducky is the clinger best friend on Molly's side. And it's a shame because looking online, the reverence, the hardcore Pretty in Pink fans, they love it for Ducky. So I was completely on a different page here. Yeah,
I bet you would be when doing research on the film. 2 actors that were seriously considered was a young Charlie Sheen, who probably would have done pretty good.
Yeah.
And also, of course, a young Robert Downey Jr.
Oh, would have taken... Absolutely.
Yeah.
Would have taken him. Absolutely. I mean, the character writing would have been the same. It still would have had this kind of creepy tone of him.
Because that's supposed to be the character.
Exactly.
Right,
He's the... he's the key to what makes people think this is a love triangle. I think that's a misunderstanding of this film, though, and the dynamics.
Okay.
That both the main duo love interests, they just have 2 really messy loose ends. On Molly's side, it's Ducky, basically. Okay. When it comes to that, though, I mean, I just think he fails at any charm, and that's the only thing the character is being pointed towards. Like, he's like the annoying theater kid in high school.
Okay, sure. Yeah,
but back in the 80s, yeah. It's very interesting because Hughes is clearly trying to write a proto-Ferris Bueller in this. He even does the Ferris Bueller look at the camera at one point, and it's like, wow. Even I mean, he's not directing here. Even the framing is so close. I was like, okay, this is...
It's Johnny Hughes. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's what I love in looking through, chronologically of films. Seeing that precursor, seeing that he saw something work, and now that's going to be fuel for, a later entry.
Yeah, very cool.
But I think it falls flat because he's a creep. Like, he's a hardcore creep. And the film tries to, give him his own little redemption. I just think it fails. It's crazy how much focus he's given in the film, too. I mean... I think he has some really iconic scenes. There's an iconic scene where he's singing an Otis Redding song, but I gotta be honest, I just think the depiction of the character, I just was not digging at all. The big turnaround for me was James Spader, though. He was fantastic in this, and fantastic to see so early on in his career. Yeah. I mean, he's so perfect. He acts like a supervillain. It was like Ultron. It was like Ultron in high school. He smokes in school. He throws like coked out parties for all the seniors, and he dresses like he's in Scarface. Like, he's straight up like it's like this loose fitting pastel powdery colors. Like, it is wild. Total delight, and him basically being in a villain role in this was a good time. It does beg the question, though, and I think this is what I end on with the film: are we even in school?
Oh, okay.
There's a serious disconnect on how our characters operate and what they're supposed to be in their lives.
Yeah, I wonder if it would be better. Okay, we have teens and we know that they're high school age, but this would be summer break.
Summer break. Well, the thing is, they even go to Andrew Dice Clay is in this.
Yes, Dice Clay. Yeah.
And there's like there's like a young adult club that they go to that a lot of like kind of punky moody bands play in, and it's just like even that as a setting, I was just like, I don't know. Just make them in college. Just make them they can actually drink.
You want to? You want a little older. Okay.
Yeah, and even as this relates to James Spader's character, the parties that he throws,
like
how
insane.
He talks. He's stalking the halls, smoking cigarettes. It's just like it just doesn't really work. I don't feel like it's certainly cool for a high school perspective. It was causing me though to say like, I don't know. I feel like the high school spin of this, that obviously is the Hughes' comfort zone.
Definitely.
I felt like it was more of a burden this time. So, if that makes sense.
It definitely makes sense. They're acting a little bit older than what they're actually supposed to be.
A huge
in the film.
Disconnect.
Yeah. Make it 4 years in advance, and they're in college.
Exactly.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah, and I think it's just a lot
Now,
better,
the big hook for the movie is the end prom, though, correct? Like, the things hinge on the prom and what happens at the prom.
Yeah, that's the ultimate destination for all the romance.
Yeah.
Who will Molly go with? Basically.
Right, yeah.
And again, those are the more generic sides to it. It's just more so the what it's wrapped up in. That's unique. Like I said, I was on the fence with this one. While there are super unique aspects that I liked quite a bit, each one is met with something that I can knock the film for. I really wanted to love this movie, but I guess I'll just have to wait a bit more for Hughes to knock it out of the park. We're going to go ahead and give Pretty in Pink a 65.
Okay, 65. Yeah. He's kind of living here.
I know, which is totally unexpected. But I mean, let me be honest. Weird Science is next. I don't think Weird Science is escaping higher than something in the 60s. We'll see.
I thought you liked that movie.
I like
Is it the nerd in you?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I think I watched it drunk and I was like, "Oh, this is great."
Oh, okay, all right, okay.
yeah. But it was like Danny Elfman's doing the music.
It's also it's also. 65 also kind of makes sense. These are teen
movies,
comedy dramas.
Yeah,
in the 80s.
Exactly. Would I score a Disney Channel movie higher? I don't know. I mean, that's basically. Oh, I know it. He's good.
Apologies to John Hughes and the Hughes family. But we'll see. We have 2 more to go.
Yeah, and obviously the final destination is Ferris Bueller. So
yes,
I'm very excited.
And more in
for
the future then too.
Yeah,
because we can take him through the 90s if we want.
Absolutely.
Home Alone, Flubber.
Not rehearsed. Not just genuinely on the same.
Genuinely excited for Flubber. Okay, all right. So that's 65, Pretty in Pink for John Hughes. We'll keep that going. We'll keep that going for next week. Next week you're doing one, right? Or are you gonna?
I think so.
Does it not work with the films?
We only have Cocaine Bear. I don't know.
Well, we'll see. We'll just see how it goes.
We'll see how it goes. We'll see how it pans out.
Okay, so we're gonna go ahead into our trilogy here. We're stepping into Antman.
Yep.
These came out in 2015, 2018, 2023. I'm glad that we're doing all 3.
Yeah,
it just makes
I
sense.
honestly needed to.
Yeah.
So.
That's very true.
Yeah.
None of these have been rated before.
Yeah.
So, okay. So going back to 2015, it's Ant-Man origin story. We have to get to know him, have to introduce our characters. You said before we have, not Michael Keaton. Who do we have?
Michael Douglas.
We have Michael Douglas, Paul Rudd,
say it. Your girl.
my girl, Evangeline Lilly. Why don't we get into this origin story here? How did you... Yeah, let's just get into it. I'll say right off the bat, I watched one.
Did you watch 2?
I called Vin, folks. And I said, I'm going to be watching 2 movies. I said, I'm going to be watching Ant-Man and Ant-Man 2 unless you tell me otherwise. Unless it's just like, well, no, you should watch Pretty in Pink or something like that. Right. And you said, well, don't really need to watch 2. You said, watch 1 because it's kind of interesting, you said. And that's all you gave me. Yeah. And you said, don't watch 2. So I watched both. Okay. And I think we might have some discourse here.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
You're looking negatively towards these films, or positively?
Well, it's just in areas yes and no to both of those. But it's also yes and no for you, but it may be in our different areas.
True.
Let's get into Ant-Man 1. It's an hour and 57 minutes.
Sure.
How do we get into the origin story first?
I would say Ant-Man 1... not trying to be an Iron Man, which so many of the MCU origin stories try to be. They just try to copy Iron Man specifically. First, Doctor Strange is a great example of this, that just trying to be Iron Man 1. Flashback to 2015, this movie was actually a kind of a personal boycott film because they got rid of my boy Edgar Wright.
He was slated to direct it?
Direct it and write it.
Okay, so he still wrote it.
Yeah, I mean, Wright was announced very early on in Kevin Feige's early planning of the MCU. I think he was announced, basically in the Phase 2, right before Avenger 1, Yeah. And rightfully so, because, believe it or not, in the comics, Ant-Man is a founding member of the Avengers.
He's like a big deal.
Yeah. Hank Pym is like, the original Ant-Man, he's big. So the classic thing with these, going back to the production history of this, is... what's the age-old thing that Disney cites? They cite creative differences. That caused a split, and Ant-Man went on the back of the burner for me.
And Edgar Wright probably wouldn't make a good movie.
Sure.
And they didn't allow it to be a good movie.
Right.
It would have been probably amazing for Edgar. You like you just said, you're a huge Edgar Wright fan.
Yeah.
If you go on and you look at the ratings, Vin is a massive Edgar Wright fan. He wrote it along with Joe Cornish. Paul Rudd also helped write it. And Adam McKay, who's a powerhouse at this time.
Well, sure.
So the writing team behind it is phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's a huge shame that Edgar Wright didn't direct it. You can only imagine how special it would have felt.
Yeah. And,
creative differences.
But maybe for the better. Maybe him working on a heist movie that led to Baby Driver in some way. You know what I mean? So that I can be thankful for that he separated.
Yes. Yeah, because who cares about Ant-Man really? Right. Here's what shocked me.
Yeah.
Because I forgot about the writing team. And then when I was looking at the writing team, that's what maybe was just like, oh, I want to watch this.
Yeah.
Okay. I was super disappointed with the writing and super disappointed with Michael Douglas.
Oh, yeah.
And almost everybody.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough.
So, I mean...
the crew, what'd you think about the crew? Michael Pena and
hated that part.
Oh, really?
Hated it.
Wow.
Oh, my gosh.
The comedy wasn't landing or what?
Yeah, the comedy wasn't landing, and the actors weren't selling it either.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, my gosh.
Fair enough.
Hated it.
Listen, this kind of gut reaction was exactly where I was coming from with kind of... I don't know. It wasn't. I mean, I'm coming off of Magic Mike. It's not like, you know.
For sure.
I don't know why I had this gut reaction coming back to Marvel this week, but you know, I'm with you. So
okay, so you are okay.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
I don't think. Well, I'll get into it a little bit. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I feel like I'm kind of throwing the review all over the place, but I figured we'll just set it up in our feelings of first, and 2 and 3 are kind of be a little bit more breezy.
We can be all over the place.
I do want to go back to the origin. It's kind of surprised me when you said we're getting a different type of origin story here.
Yeah.
In what way do you feel that it's different from the others or from that Iron Man?
I think the Iron Man formula is Act 1, hero is injured. Act 2, you know, superpowers anointed, you know, given, and then Act 3 is plug for other Marvel stuff. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So that's where I would say this doesn't fit that bill exactly because. I mean, Scott Lang as a character, he's a criminal. He's definitely kind of broken in the beginning. I think this just does a lot more fun. Has a lot more fun with just being a heist movie, and at least is trying to have fun with the satire and the comedy. Clearly not landing.
Well, for me, I think it's a bad heist movie.
Oh, fair.
Not once in my head did I think I was watching a heist movie.
Really?
Yeah, I think it was a bad heist movie.
Okay, fair enough.
Again, I almost think everyone bad, and the only question is on the bad scale, who's worse and who's god awful.
I love this.
And who's relatively bad.
This is great.
I didn't like Evangeline Lilly. I didn't like Michael Douglas was not good, but I think the writing was shit. Honestly,
see, I like Douglas. I thought he was. His quippiness wasn't Marvel quippy. It was he was just kind of like a sassy asshole, you know.
Yes, the way the lines were delivered, honestly.
Yeah,
he might as well phoned it in. I just wasn't impressed with it. Nothing was sold to me. And then the bad guy, terrible bad guy.
Sure.
I mean, he was a good dorky governor or in a race to become governor in House of Cards. He was a great character for Kevin Spacey to kill. But as the
spoilers.
As the main
Season 1. Season 1 spoilers.
As the main bad guy,
Corey Stoll
was a joke. He just looks goofy. I mean,
very true.
He's just a goofy person.
Very true.
And yeah, it's just Rudd as a character. I understand why they picked him. It's like I'm supposed to believe that he doesn't even look or feel like a criminal in any sort of way. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, I thought that fact was odd. Scott Lang in the comic books is actually a criminal. So one of my earliest notes was just like, why are they making him an ex-con? But apparently they
should have made him cooler. I just thought the writing was bad, and I don't think anyone delivered it well. Anyone.
Sure.
I don't know if there's a character I enjoyed in the movie. Wow. I'm not joking.
I think you're right on the money in the sense that we are on opposite sides for the first time. I mean, I think...
I don't think for the first time, but...
I think I was much more positive on this film. Not that
I'm going to shut up. I want to hear... I want to hear kind of your perspective.
Let me see you for a sec. I think the best way I would set up someone for this is that it's 40% comedy, 40% heist, 20% having to hit on the Marvel continuity. I think if there's anything that was really detracting this from me from enjoyment, it was that forced in Marvel continuity. All of the Antman films are placed very awkwardly as kind of transition films between major movements in the MCU.
Yeah,
so
very true.
When it comes to who suffers? Well, guess what? It's the Ant-Man movie that suffers. It's Ant-Man's character. This film, honestly, was right on point with the latest Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness, that I felt like it was having a lot of fun. I felt like there was some things that were exciting that it did very creatively, but ultimately it was hindered by having to check the boxes for the MCU plugins, basically.
Okay, that surprises me. You were having a good time watching it?
I think I was, yeah.
Oh, okay, all right.
Because all right.
Well, no, that's fine. I'm genuinely curious.
I think Scott Lang, played by Paul Rudd, this depiction of a criminal with heart getting out of jail, roping into one last job, I think that's very generic. But as soon as he's introduced to this kind of trap that Michael Douglas lays as Dr. Hank Pym, I feel like it was just I was digging that environment. That relationship. I was digging Michael Douglas kind of poking fun of them though both being smart, but Hank Pym being like so much smarter as a character.
Yeah.
I thought that relationship was a highlight for me when it comes to those two. Comedy wise, I would say it's heavy on Rudd's shoulders. There's a lot of attempted satire. Attempted. But it's real hit or miss, especially with 2015 Marvel. We really have to kind of flash back to what type of comedy was being written with that. I mean, it's all Marvel kitsch.
It's all schlock, yeah,
right?
Marvel schlock, yeah.
But it's evolved and
yeah, for sure, yeah.
Yeah. So, like I said, I was gonna kind of ask why he was so badass or being portrayed as badass, but he's an ex-con in the comics, so I guess that's what it has to be. His crew of friends that help out with these comedic beats, most notably Michael Pena. Interesting. I think the only time that I was really laughing was there's these segments that Michael Pena does a voiceover of other stories recalling. It's right out of Drunk History, if you've ever seen that show. It's stripped right out of that kind of concept that we have a funny voiceover to actors kind of taking a story semi-seriously.
I had to say, after those segments, it was like, well, they tried it at least.
Yeah. I think those are where it slightly works. So
okay.
No, you were digging it.
No, I was like, why is
frowny face.
This should have been done better. This could have been done cool. And that's honestly, you know what's funny? As soon as I saw that, I was like, oh my God, if Edgar Wright should have just directed this, it would have been so much better.
Oh, absolutely.
I also, it's also, I'm not the biggest Paul Rudd fan.
Okay.
Because I find him kind of, I don't know.
I'm not defending Rudd.
Generic. I have never, I don't think ever liked, in fact, actively probably disliked movies more because of Michael Pena.
Really?
Yeah.
What?
I think he makes most movies worse.
Axe to grind for Pena.
Yeah, again, I don't know. He's like generic. He doesn't add anything ever. I don't know.
Fair enough.
Not the biggest Pena fan.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
So here's the whiplash. My note here is that I felt that this movie was surprisingly good in ways. I didn't expect how, really, if I can kind of boil it down to 3 points. One, I did not expect how much literal ants would be in the plot. And literal ants are kind of solving the plot.
I didn't hate that, by the way.
Yeah, I see that, and that relates to Michael Douglas.
And one thing, yes, and I guess one thing was they didn't make the ants super gross looking.
Sure,
you know what I mean? It was just like, oh, this works.
Yeah,
I was all right with that.
There's a cuteness to it.
Yes.
So I am a huge fan of Michael Douglas as an actor. Here, I thought again, Hank Pym is an interesting character. He's supposed to be like one of the smartest characters in all of Marvel comics.
Yeah.
So,
did you really like him? I mean, I thought his line delivery was not good.
Really?
Yeah, I really did.
I think
thought
that's
it was
just Michael
bad.
Douglas.
Maybe it is.
Yeah,
maybe
maybe just
maybe I just don't like Michael Douglas.
Axe to grind. I guess I was just happy with his character that he wasn't just sidelined as a mentor. Like him controlling the ants. Basically, he's Antman too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's Antman as well.
Yes.
I should say, not him too.
They just gave him a bunch of one-liners.
Yeah.
It was a little annoying.
Yeah, true. I mean, that's Marvel.
It's all right.
Corey Stoll, I 100% with you that he's not acting good in this. I did enjoy how
He's the goofy bad guy?
100% cartoonish villain he was. I mean, he turned someone into a booger at one point.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. There was a moment that I was like, okay, this is right on point with old Marvel, pre-Black Panther, Infinity War, where their villain characters are just like 100% villain. There's no depth to them being written any deeper that you can agree with them in some way or anything like that. Basically how we see with Killmonger in Black Panther 1. But I'm telling you, Corey, I think he is where the comedy works because that's the best satire. That is where like the evil corporate villain, he's like...
I do get it. I think there was a couple times I smirked, but the problem is he's not believable.
Sure.
So when you have him becoming really bad guy and taking form into bad guy, it's not believable.
Yeah.
It's not believable. I almost would have rathered him... Make him like the Boris character for 007. Make him the like the nerdy right-hand man to the really bad guy.
To the bad guy.
I don't know.
Right.
It's just, you know what I mean? I understand he was over the top.
Yeah.
The menacing part wasn't believable.
Sure.
So when he got menacing, it's like, goofy guy?
I mean, it was definitely cartoonish, but I think it leaned into the cartoonishness so much.
Okay.
You know. That's where I thought the highlight was.
No doubt he wasn't. He was hamming it up.
Yeah,
for sure.
exactly. And third and most importantly, and it's a shame that the sequels lose this. I actually think this is some of the best CGI in Marvel. No joke. I'm telling you, these shrunken sequences against all odds, I think they look so interesting. They look so good in comparison to other Marvel CGI is infamous. It's terrible.
Yeah, not as bad as DC, but yeah.
Yeah. When I say these shrunken scenes, what is removed from future sequels is that Ant-Man is not given time while he's as the size of an ant. In this film, constantly when he's shrinking, there are entire sequences that play out that he has to interact with something real in the environment or something that is tied to how we can see in real life what it would be like to be shrunk down to that size. And I think it does a lot for the CGI. One, there is a soft blurring around the edges of the frame that making a really effective shrunken feel, and I think sells the CGI much better than having the CGI just be in front of
interesting, yeah.
Actual footage.
Yeah.
So I think it kind of sells its own environment, if you will. And I think it's effective because it takes these real textures that we're used to and real objects and uses them to great effect to kind of sell the illusion of the shrinking. You do not see this. I think there's like one scene in the second one and it's completely missing from the third. And I don't know why, because I think they're the most effective scenes at selling the fun of Ant-Man.
It is the best part of Ant-Man 1. And this is when I was like, oh, okay, when you had said, at least it's interesting, one is interesting, this is where I found it interesting as well.
Yeah.
I did enjoy watching these scenes.
Yeah.
This was, in my opinion, the most clever.
Mm-hmm.
It was the most engaging to just be in and watch, for sure.
Yeah.
And they definitely do a decent amount of them.
Yeah.
They were playing with the tech, definitely. And it's great, though. And I mean...
And you see when Ant-Man eventually gets his enlarged power, it's a complete reversal of why these scenes work. Because now we have a CGI Paul Rudd giant on the screen in a real environment, in an actual filmed environment, and it looks out of place. Where my praise here is that so much is being done to create this shrunken down feeling and tie it to real objects, real textures that we're used to, that it sells the CGI as a fantasy. I think it really sells the illusion much more.
I think you're totally spot on with that.
Yeah.
And it was, definitely the most enjoyable parts of the movie for me as well.
So maybe not best of the MCU, but I really think, it was shocking to me how the number one problem with Marvel is rushed CGI, and that was that was a highlight here. I think the best highlight.
Yeah, and I would say yes. I almost wish we could. I mean, it's now the film is what, 8 years old now. It probably it would look even that much better.
Yeah,
8 years ago when it first came out.
Sure,
but definitely whether it's still that great a CGI, the point is it's also unique. It's unique for something that Marvel's doing here.
Yeah.
And you could almost say that, give a little bit of praise of maybe to the first Doctor Strange, the way it's kind of playing with the dimensions and everything like that.
Absolutely.
At least it's something different.
Yep.
So definitely praise there.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say there's a lot that works in this film, and for me, it was shocking that those best aspects were sidelined in the sequels. I mean, like really sidelined. In the sequels, we'll get into it, but we see that the shrinking effect becomes kind of a quick up and down that they just kind of pop in and out of, and none of this world of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids is given any kind of attention. And I think that, again, that's where the film was a lot of fun and looking the best. So it has no right being 2 hours long, but it was surprising how much it was worth watching, even past its placement in the MCU timeline. We're going to go ahead and give Antman a 67.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
No, I'm not mad at that.
I think this was neck and neck exactly with a second Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness.
Okay.
In how creative, in how much Pendon Reed as a director was able to put a stamp on it.
Yeah.
Maybe that was some aftermath of the skeletons of Wright's script. But I think this was a breath of fresh air, even going back to a 2015 Marvel movie. Like, why would you ever return to this?
I can respect that. I can respect that.
All right, give me it.
I don't think I'm gonna give it shoes. I don't think
shoes.
I don't think it needs shoes. I don't know.
Wow. Hey, listen, that's
it's that thing of like I don't care enough about it.
Fair.
But all I know is I didn't really like it. Okay. And I know that I liked 2 more.
Whoa! Okay. All right, yeah, we are on the total opposite end. You like 2 more?
Listen, not by all.
Walter Goggins could not have saved that movie. What?
Okay, so first of all, let's just finish up with Ant-Man.
Yes.
I'm not going to give it shoes. It would be, for me, somewhere around 1 shoe, probably.
Okay.
I don't think a second shoe's getting on that foot. Yeah.
Fair.
Okay. So 3 years later, we're back. We have the same main cast. We have Michael Douglas, Evangeline Lilly, who, by the way, I didn't really enjoy in the first one. I'm glad they changed up her hair in the second one much better.
Sure.
She's cooler in the second one. I think they should have made her even cooler.
Yeah, but honestly, in all 3 of these, very minor. I think she gets, she's sidelined despite she now sharing the title.
She's the lead female. It's just like,
she's the Wasp.
Make her cooler. Make her cool. Anyway.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, we're back with Paul Rudd and all the greats. Michael Cena is back, or what's his name? Michael Pena is back as well as Paul Rudd's buddy. And I think the reason why I like 2 better, I'll give my 10,000 foot view.
I love it. Yeah,
you can get into the weeds of what it is and how you liked it. But overall, for the second Ant-Man and the Wasp, I like it because we're not dealing with an origin story, which much like you kind of have problems with, where you're just like done with it. I like the fact that we know what we're dealing with, and we're just get right into it for the most part.
Fair enough.
I like the fact that we don't have much of this origin story, the shock and awe of finding out that you're Ant-Man, that kind of stuff.
Sure.
I also like it because I thought the bad guy and the way the bad guy works and operates throughout the world, kind of cool.
Yep. Ghost.
Right. Yep. Yeah. It honestly could have been because I watched it back to back that I had been prepared. Yeah. It's like, you don't expect greatness. Don't expect that the joking is actually going to be good.
Yeah.
The writing won't be good. In my opinion, the line delivery won't be good. Acting will not really be good.
So the bar was set so catastrophically low.
It could be something so dumb as that too.
Right.
Had I watched 2 first and then went to, where did his story start? And I went to 1. I could be reversed on this.
Yeah.
And that's what it's not that big of a statement. It's a very loose. This is better than the first one.
Right.
But generally speaking, I kind of like the pacing of film 2, and I liked the story a little bit more. I thought I liked Lawrence Fishburne in it as well.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, we are. I'll tell you
I
what.
fell asleep during both of them, by the way.
Okay. All right. Rudd's putting him to sleep. He's getting some shut eye on this.
So that's my very uneducated kind of review.
No.
Why don't you take it? What are we dealing with this one?
I'm glad that you did enjoy 2, because I think 2 has the potential to do some
Michael
things.
Douglas has more depth as well.
Sure.
And
Yeah,
he is not a character of one-liners.
Fair. I think it's valid criticism.
And come on, Michelle Pfeiffer is stuck somewhere in the multiverse thing or whatever like that. It's,
right.
I'm in. I'm down.
Well, we'll get to Michelle Pfeiffer in 3. I mean, it's a doozy. But we are continuing the Peyton Reed trilogy here. For those that don't care about maybe some of the Edgar Wright stuff, I mean, Peyton Reed, interesting as far as a comedic director. I know him from Yes Man, which is...
It's Paul Rudd. He's got Paul Rudd.
Right. Is Paul Rudd in Yes Man? I actually don't know.
I have no idea. I could have sworn. As soon as I saw Peyton Reed, I was like, oh, of course, they're working together.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, I didn't even mention. Sorry, yeah, he directs all 3 of these.
Yep, exactly. And for those that want to go back even farther, if you grew up with an older sister, Bring It On as well. Which, if I ever have a gun to my head, I can recite surprisingly well. I mean, the title really sums up this one. It is more the same, and honestly, I think a poor execution of what works previously. Granted, I have a serious axe to grind with them getting rid of my favorite aspect, which are the more fleshed out shrunken scenes, the Honey and Shrunk the Kids scenes.
I'm not upset about it.
Really?
I think I'm just, okay, one, we know that we need them, and they need to do it for a bit because it's crazy. Paul Rudd, whoa, we need Paul Rudd getting used to it. You know what I mean? Yeah. So we need the origin. This is what it is. And also, bad guy could also shrink.
I don't think she can, though.
No, in the first one.
Oh, right, yes, of course.
And yeah, so since bad guy can shrink in the first one, it just makes sense that we're having these shrunken scenes.
Corey Stoll.
Yes. Goofy.
Season 1 of House of Cards.
So in the second one, it's like, okay, we get it now. I'm not going to disagree. 1 or 2 would have been nicer.
Yeah.
But we're dealing with a different kind of bad guy, and Paul Rudd already knows the deal. We don't need his learning of the experience of shrinking.
Yeah.
So now it's used much more strategically. You're saying it's much more big, small, it's faster.
Yeah.
And I like this idea of we're seeing Antman using his abilities that he's now comfortable with.
Sure.
In
Fair.
a cool, more action kind of way.
I think that's a great point.
Yeah.
I just think as far as the film's strength, it puts to the sideline what was easily the biggest highlight for me. You know what I mean? I think visually those are the strongest, the most iconic, and
totally agree.
And
totally
definitely
agree.
the best looking, you know? Yeah, as far as the summary here, upon discovering the quantum realm, Dr. Hank Pym believes there is a chance to save his long-lost wife and reshape his once whole family. A laundry list of requirements are needed to get that done, roping in Scott Lang once again to work with Pym. And now alongside his former love interest, Hope Van Dyne, I think her name is, Evangeline Lilly.
Yeah.
This spawns a cat and mouse with his shrunken lab headquarters as a new villain, the Ghost, or just Ghost, is after the same quantum technology to save herself. I would say, admittedly, the last film was placed awkwardly as a bridge to Captain America Civil War, like I said. We get some cameos in that film that kind of create that bridge there and introduce Scott Lang to the greater MCU. This coming after that film brings so much more baggage, though. Characters are constantly referencing the previous film, and I don't know if it's because Civil War is one of my least favorite MCU films, but I found this to be much more overdone. It's constantly weaving in MCU continuity, and I just felt it was too much. They're referencing the Accords. He has a parole agent, presumably a part of S.H.I.E.L.D. or something like that. You know, I felt it was just so much interwoven. It was like kind of sickening, and to go back and experience this. Something that in the grand scheme will not really matter that much for where, you know, the big blockbusters are going to be with Infinity War and Endgame. I felt it was a little bit annoying for me.
Yeah, I agree with that as well.
Yeah.
I wondered, did they both come out in 2018?
I believe so. Yeah, Antman and Wasp was right before Endgame or Infinity War. I don't know if it was. I think it might have been in between.
What I'm saying is in relation to Civil War, because that's what we're talking. This was
after Civil War.
Right, but that's what they're in reference to.
Oh, yes, of course.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But that's what I'm wondering. I'm wondering if at the time of this making it, do they think it's fresh in everybody's mind? Do they think that everyone is up to date and understanding, so it's a continuation?
I don't know. I mean, there's again, I'm in the outlier here. I really don't like Civil War. However, it is a huge movie for fans of the MCU.
Right. It's Avengers 1.5?
2.5, yeah.
Yeah. Which it is. It's what it is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a Russo brothers joint.
I just don't know if and the reason why I bring up the whole timing of it is because if this is our first Marvel movie we get after Civil War, then I can see if they think that just naturally this is more fresh for everybody, or something like that.
Yeah. I would say it's a lot less funny. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on this. I thought this was even less funny than the first one.
Because there's less attempted jokes, or the jokes don't land even more?
I think the jokes don't land even more. Perfect example is there's a FaceTime interrogation scene. They allow Scott Lang to do some FaceTime, and it was just like, man, this is Thor Love and Thunder bad. Like, this is modern MCU bad comedy. I think that this movie encapsulates it. But what are your thoughts?
No, I think it's bad. I think it was terrible in the first one, just as it was in Thor.
Right.
And I also think maybe some of the stuff landed a little bit more. I felt like this movie was a little bit more serious.
Yeah?
Yeah, totally agree. The FBI agent.
Oh, yeah.
It's just like, please stop.
Like, get out of the movie.
Yeah, please go away.
I totally agree.
So, I don't know. I feel like it was a little bit more serious. I'm glad that we developed Michael Douglas a little bit more, but I think you're totally right.
Sure.
The scene was bad.
Yeah. I think that single-handedly is worse than anything in Antman 1.
I don't know. Michael Pena is just like not good.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's surprising.
Absolutely.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I'm not like hardcore dying on a sword for him, but
even the bad character in this felt more serious and more real. When you first see the couple times, it's like, oh, this is kind of creepy. This is good.
Sure.
You know, and you never felt that with Goofy Bald Guy.
Very true.
It's much given.
I hope we get the chance to revisit a Corey Stoll film at some point in the podcast to call him Goofy Bald Guy once again. I think there's also much more of a family spin than the last one, and we see this clocked up as well for the third entry here. You see the shift from cool criminal to dad vigilante in Scott's character, and I think that's, again, an important element of how this comedy is being sold. It's no longer we're surrounded by criminals, we're surrounded by people trying to operate in between the law and Avengers and bad guys and S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra. Instead, it's now just like, well, Scott's a dad, and he also is a family man, and he's also...
he's best friends with his ex-wife's husband now.
Right.
The stepfather.
Ridiculous. Ridiculous. I just think it's just got a lot worse writing, a lot of boring techno babble, and little weight given to it. There's a line that I wrote down. You should be fine if you modify your units on the diffractor regulator. That means exactly nothing. And that's what I mean by techno babble. If folks, you're not familiar with that kind of like a writing term. Or something I
didn't think it was technical enough.
Oh, really?
I thought it was so dumbed down and generic. I got upset at that line.
Yeah.
Because it was too basic.
Sure.
I wanted
Go
more.
in deeper?
Well, if the doctor is this smarty pants, and Paul Rudd is supposed to be an engineer, or whatever, I want almost to get confused with the language.
Yeah, we're constantly.
I want to think these guys deserve to be in these positions, but it's not. It's Michael Douglas doing one. I will say the one-liners with Paul Rudd were worse than this one.
Yeah, absolutely. And
you're so right because they can't sell him.
He plays constantly the idiot in the room. He says, "Oh yeah, I understand that," or something like that. He's supposed to be smart too.
It's constant. It's constant.
Yeah, I agree. It's also a very frustrating plot, and frustrated how it interacts as scene to scene. The plot is a detour away from our characters' goals, and I think the film feels just a lot more blah as a result. I mean, this cat and mouse with his lab, kind of fun. But I think it's really pulling teeth after a while, and also this is what I have a big problem with. And flashing back to last week with Magic Mike, what is with sequels resetting the love interest? Like, I don't get why we have to reset the love interest.
I don't think we had much of a love interest. We barely had love interest in the first one.
A little bit.
Like a tiny little bit.
Were you sleeping? No, I'm joking.
It wasn't all that much there. I think it was almost assumed and it just kind of happened. And
Right,
then the second
it was
one,
comic booky.
Yeah, and we're dealing with like, oh, they're angry at him this time around. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Right.
It's whatever.
And like I said already, I mean, the worst aspect for me is these less innovative shrunken scenes. I think in a lot of instances, it's replaced with that quicker shrink grow punch that is basically all of Ant-Man now. And worst of all, I would say Scott's new power of enlarging his size is, again, a complete reversal of my praise of why I think the CGI works.
I can agree with that completely, because now we're just dealing with Paul Rudd Godzilla.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think a 2018 Marvel Rush CGI artists are going to... it's going to look drastically worse than the... I wouldn't say the careful, but the curated type of approach is saying, how do we shrink down an environment? What does Ant-Man interact with that environment like?
Right, the fibers of the carpet.
Yeah.
And
what textures are familiar to the audience? That's where the praise is for the first. And again,
I totally agree.
This enlargement is a complete reversal of that. I think it looks like trash. So I don't think there's a single CGI shot in this that would even come close to the worst of first Ant-Man, and that's just such a disappointment. I'm going to go out on a wild guess and say the best elements of the last film were probably the remnants of Edgar Wright's script, but that could just be wish fulfillment on my end. But this one was a real slog to get through with some impossibly sloppy writing. And no spoilers, but the ending has some real lame plot convenience that made me super angry and just turned my brain off altogether. This one gets a pass from me, but I don't think anyone will miss it except the fella across the desk from me. We're going to go ahead and give Ant-Man and the Wasp a 34.
Wow, in the 30s. Wow.
Yeah,
We're not a fan.
This was a notch above Love and Thunder for me.
Oh my god!
I'm serious.
I hated that movie.
Oh, I feel you.
Love and Thunder. No, this is. I can't believe how frustrated you were with the film.
Yeah, I mean,
Walter Goggins couldn't save it for you, huh?
Walter Goggins,
our boy.
Admit it to me though, he's a little lame in this. I mean, talk about night and day with Fat Man. You know? He's barely a character.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I still like to see him on screen.
It's true.
And by the way, when I say this is bad, I'm still going to hold true that I think this is a little bit better. I almost wish I watched 2 first and then 1. See how my tune would change.
It'd be interesting.
I would say this still would get a shoe.
Right.
This is still one shoe. We're not jumping.
I feel like Marvel for you is all going to be just one shoe, honestly.
Wow, that's a genius thing you just said there, Ben. I'm not really going to think about that.
Right.
Maybe with very, very few exceptions.
But I really do think that's an important perspective because you're not a comic book fan. You're seeing these as, the massive amount of audiences that may just tune in for one random film. They're not tuning in for every single in the
I'll try to maybe catch up on YouTube or something like that before it. There is one of our first podcasts we did. I almost feel like trying to go back and cite through. You gave a phrase to what Marvel movies are, and it was genius. And I told myself never to forget it because I would love to bring it up again for you. Totally forgot it.
We totally forgot it.
We're on episode 71. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
But okay, 30
maybe when covering Black Widow.
Maybe. But it was overall, you said some type of, I think it was actually Spider-Man, maybe. No Way Home. But and he was like, I've never heard it summed up in one sentence before like you did. So really good job before.
Good job on that thing.
34% Ant-Man and the Wasp. A little harsh, but
hey,
I can see how you got there at least.
Yeah.
Okay, so now, folks, just before we do our last film here, remember, we are completely producer supported. If you want to be a producer, you go to thedailyratings.com, you go to the donations tab, and you donate whatever amount of value that you feel you're getting from the podcast and website. If you're enjoying yourself, you're making your own movie lists through what we have to say and Vin's reviews, then hey, could you throw us back some value? And it's whatever number you want that to be. You write it in a note, we're going to read it here on air, and that's how you become a producer of the Daily Ratings. It's a value for value model, and we thank all of you who have and hopefully soon will produce the Daily Ratings. We appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right, Vin. Now, with that, we're going to go to, we had Ant-Man, then we had Ant-Man and the Wasp. Now we have Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania.
They get longer and clumsier.
Besides a few brief sentences reading about this, I wanted to stay away from other critics. I kind of just to see what you had to say about it. So if you can set it up a little bit, or overall, how did we return here 5 years later to the Ant-Man story?
Yeah, once again, Ant-Man is kind of put in an interesting position. His film is being used as a tool cool. In this, we have the big bottleneck for Phase 4 in the MCU.
It's unfortunate.
And honestly, yeah, well, Phase
like
4 has been all over the place.
Ant-Man is the biggest swinging guy now.
Right,
Which
exactly.
is what he was the afterthought in Phase 1, practically.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. When it comes to, Phase 4 ranging in quality, I mean, we have the lows of Thor, Love, and Thunder, but we also have bright spots like Raimi's, very creative take on Doctor Strange and whatnot. But one thing was certain, and I've been saying this for every review leading up to this, we need a villain to build up to, and in Quantumania, we finally have the attempt to introduce our next big bad, Kang the Conqueror. Kang is, it's a tough villain to do. This is much harder to implement than like Josh Brolin putting a voice on CGI Thanos.
Okay, tell us who Kang is then.
Kang
really
is
give us the lowdown here.
Here, let me. I was gonna save it for the end, but
I think it's good just because you're very good at knowing characters.
Sure.
And because we're going through so much with Marvel.
Yeah. Why should we give it to him?
Well, place him in the universe for us. Because, I think a lot of people, me included.
Why should we give it to him?
Right. Or where does he come from? What comic does he spawn out of?
Yeah, absolutely. So Kang is a big-time villain in the origins of Fantastic Four. And I would say that's important to note because no doubt he is going to probably, I would imagine, make an appearance in the Fantastic Four reboot that's coming out in 2025. With losing so many big stars in the MCU, intentionally as well, I would imagine that Fantastic Four movie is going to be, a lot riding on its shoulders.
Yeah, I think definitely.
So far, we've seen him in the Disney Plus show Loki, and now he makes an appearance here for his big screen impression. Kang's played by Jonathan Majors, and we will see him again in Creed 3. And I think he did a pretty good job. I'll say he is, like I said just a moment ago, he's playing a much tougher role than just giving an evil voice to a CGI character like Josh Brolin did with Thanos. Instead, I mean, he has to sell an on-screen performance, a certain buffness that comes with every Marvel character now.
Yeah, definitely.
And yet Kang is a deeply intellectual character, a mastermind, and I feel like it's just a tough juggling act. Also, Kang as a character has been all around the timeline, in basically the MCU time, or not the MCU, the comic book timeline. Kang is able to travel to any point in time, any dimension he wants. So that's just so much you have to bake into a performance, and I definitely see an attempt from Jonathan Majors to make him otherworldly.
Right.
He's not really like talking proper, but you see that there's a different approach taken to this character. I don't know if that is the most menacing thing, though. I don't think Kang was sold as this, this big bad like we need him to be.
Well, if he has that kind of powers, it's definitely something to build on.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure. Now, his physical appearance, is it big time CGI, or is it really we're dealing with him and his buffness?
Yeah,
actor's buffness.
It's him. We don't really see his buffness until a few scenes in the film, but it's basically classic. It's really honestly all over this film. It's the Iron Man from Infinity War. It's the nano suit. It kind of comes over them. They get covered in the CGI body.
Yes,
basically.
yes,
So
okay.
The helmet will come down. You'll see Majors acting. You'll see him, as he normally is, but then he's covered in kind of like a CGI skin, if you will.
Okay.
The same is true actually for all of the Ant-Man suits that we see in this for Ant-Man and the Wasp. It's just this nano suit that covers over them. I think it looks lame, but it's honestly everywhere now. So
it is.
We can't escape it. I think my note for Major is that he has a lot of work to do because he's not terrible at selling the character in this, but the character is nowhere near as menacing, I think, as it needs to be. And I think this is a byproduct of why are you pairing it up with your last comedy star? The Ant-Man is a comedy hero property. Why are we not only sidelining, once again, in his own film, to give the spotlight somewhere else? I just feel like it's just a poor mismatch to try to sell this, one of the biggest bads of all time,
Right.
In this comedy, vehicle for Paul Rudd.
Comedy
hero vehicle, if that makes sense.
It makes sense, but just look at Marvel. Look at Thor. It's a horrible comedy.
Right.
You know what I mean? What isn't comedy now?
Yeah, I know. It's the Marvel kitschiness.
So it's like, well, where else?
You can maybe say the same with like the Guardians films, that those are comedies, but
they're kind of all
still
comedies.
Introduced like Thanos' crew or his presence.
Who would you like to see? Okay, if we're going to have Kang the Conqueror, whatever his name is, okay, we have to get people used to him, build up his badness for whatever. Where do you think he does belong? With what character is sparring against first?
I think it's a Fantastic Four, and I hate to say it, but you got to bring back Dr. Doom once again for the third time.
Who's Dr. Doom?
Dr. Doom is the guy with the green cloak, metal face.
He's a bad guy?
He's the bad guy in every Fantastic Four.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
No, but I'm talking about to introduce this bad character.
Yeah. I
think
think you put him in Fantastic Four. You put him in a more serious.
That's what I'm saying. That we're running out of those,
and we are.
You know what I mean? Like, because Morbius doesn't count, right? Because that's
Sony
stuff.
Yeah.
That's Sony property.
Yeah, that's on its own island.
Okay.
Thank God.
I don't know where we are. Or what about that one with Angelina Jolie that no one remembered? Eternals.
Eternals.
Would he fit there?
Who knows? Who knows where Eternals going to be positioned?
Are we going to start a Marvel podcast?
I guess so. You're going to have to read up.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's take a step back here because we dived directly into Kang, and I think that's where a lot of the curiosity with this film is. And again, I think there's almost a utilitarian perspective to using Antman once again to be a bottleneck to the next stage, the next phase. So he's, like I said with Black Widow, like I said with countless other Marvel films lately, Antman gets sidelined in his own movie to be a platform for majors as Kang. I don't think it's a terrible thing because guess what? Ant-Man has been trending pretty bad, so I was kind of open to it. I was kind of fine with him getting his film hijacked. So, Quantumania kicks off with us checking in on Ant-Man's success after being a pivotal role in the events of Endgame. His daughter, now grown to be the spitting image of her heroic father, begins touring with technology alongside Dr. Pym in probing the quantum realm. However, when warned of the dangers of the tech, it is already too late, as the whole Ant family, I actually don't remember if the Ant family was a term used in the film or not, but it's pretty good, is dragged into the quantum realm to discover an equally mind-blowing and dangerous new world. Straight up, this film is trying to be Thor Ragnarok. 100% trying to just copy Thor Ragnarok. It doesn't have the same flip from fantasy to sci-fi, but it's identical in introducing far-out sci-fi worlds that is an open slate for new characters, wacky comedy, and a razzle-dazzle for the audience in both concept and design. However, switching up changes the visual language of the Ant-Man franchise. We're no longer anything to do with heisting. We're no longer doing anything with criminals and kind of, if you will, street-level crime or street-level heroes. It's now a CGI, 99% CGI, and it's kind of a mess for that reason. The CGI comes with very good and very bad. I would say as a positive is there are some really wild sci-fi designs. I was really impressed with how adventurous and how wild a lot of the concepts were. The home film is a barrage of insane alien designs that all kind of pass a believability because this quantum realm is like completely fiction.
Right.
It's also interesting because I was trying to compare it to something, and the best thing I could come up with is that it's Journey to the Center of the Earth and Tron, because this shrunken, this hidden world is ruled by a totalitarian government. So it was really like this kind of shrunken Tron type of thing.
It's like the users versus the programs.
Exactly. Kang's the program.
I'm going to like 3 the most.
Yeah.
I should have watched it.
Right. So I want to give a lot of praise because
This movie sounds awesome.
I am not, a self-described sci-fi nut without loving design and loving new design. And there was a lot of love.
There was some freshness there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. However, it does come with the bad, and I would say this CGI is taken to an extreme. Like I said, it's like 99% CGI. I personally felt that there was such an extreme disconnect between actors and their wild environments on screen. It adds to the unusually stale tone, and this film, believe it or not, is a little bit stale. When Kang's not on screen, believe it or not, it's kind of boring. Even for all this, this wild new world that we're discovering. And stale is exactly what I would use as a word for all of the performances. There is such a conflict with the intended tone of the film, dragged out by Kang being a super villain, and then as well in this Thor Ragnarok kind of setup of just let's get introduced to the new world and let's be dazzled by it.
Right.
I felt like it was just could not find its footing, and comedy-wise, performance-wise, that's where it couldn't find its footing. Reminded me of like actors first interacting with computer graphics and just not knowing what's going on. Or actually, let me make a Lord of the Rings callback. Okay. When Ian McKellen.
Yes.
When Ian McKellen broke down crying filming The Hobbit. Because he's like, this is no longer acting.
He wasn't acting with people, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly that.
Okay, gotcha.
And I think that affects comedy most of all. So
was comedy tried as much, though?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Attempted. Just like the very first note is attempted satire.
Because the writing crew was different from the second one to the first one.
Yep.
And it was still like 4 people. We're dealing with one writer this time, Jeff Loveness. Loveness.
Interesting.
But okay, that's a shame.
Yeah. I would say an issue that I had with this one is that half the story teases out very slowly. And unfortunately, it's all on Michelle Pfeiffer's character. I mean, I love Michelle Pfeiffer. Love her in Scarface.
Not so much in Antman and the Wasp, Quantumania.
Love her in Batman Returns. She's a great Catwoman. But I was, honestly excited to see her performance. She was almost unbelievably, I think, the worst part here.
Wow.
She has, we go from a character that literally knows everything about this realm, about the quantum realm.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
And in this setup, in this Thor Ragnarok setup, our characters don't know. They're fish out of the water. They're fighting for survival, basically. And then Kang kind of looming over in this pressure for it. She knows the whole deal.
Yeah.
And yet, very frustratingly, and for no reason, she withholds information, not even from Ant-Man. It's her direct family. It just makes no sense how information and plot is teased out so slowly in this film. It's very frustrating. I would say, the plot is like they want you to believe they are stuck in the most dire situation, yet the character that has the answer to solve the dire situation is just not giving the answers. And that's
talking.
That's when I turn my brain off, because I'm like, all right, this is clearly trying to fill the runtime or set up again Kang as a platform in the Ant-Man movie, so. And I already talked about Kang to death. That was going to be kind of my final notes. Again, if I can kind of just summarize that, I think Jonathan Majors does a good job, has almost an impossible role to film, to fill. We're getting into weird, out there characters in the MCU as they're running through the barrel. I think if anything, this really illuminated for me that when we do get a Galactus, or when we do get really high-end cosmic powers in the MCU as villains, I think all the more we have to make them tied to character work. Just how Josh Brolin was able to create a magnetic villain that, you could almost agree with as far as motives. I think that really needs to be clocked up quite a bit to sell these out there characters. And Kang is one of those, one of the most wild villains in comics. And this bleeds into really my final thought with the film. If this is a poor Ant-Man platform, and a lukewarm introduction to Kang, who without a doubt, we will get more screen time with. really, is it worth it at all? I'm gonna go ahead and get ready the mouthful. Antman and the Wasp, Quantumania, a 44.
Interesting score. I wasn't expecting this.
Really?
Yeah, I thought for sure it was just going to be the worst. I can't believe you liked the second one that little.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, though. The audience score, Rotten Tomatoes, for this film, 84.
Really?
84 for the audience. Okay, so right now we have Quantumania.
Yeah.
We'll run down the whole Rotten Tomatoes thing. So Quantumania, the audience score for the first one was an 85.
Okay.
Second one was an 80.
Yep.
Third one is tracking at an 84.
Wow.
Okay. The critics gave, first of all, the second one an 87.
Okay.
Props, baby. Props. They liked the first one the best.
The first time Tom will praise Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah. The second one the best, the first one the second best, and they hated the third one so far. But I'm surprised for you, 44%, 10 above Ant-Man and the Wasp. It just surprised me. But it's also a bigger movie. More things are going on as well. That's for sure. Especially if they're trying to deal out bad guy number 2.
Yeah, I think I've said a lot on it. The only other thing that I'll throw out there is that, again, in this kind of, I don't know, in Marvel, almost to your point, or what we said with Marvel is always going to be one shoe. I feel like this movie hits on such a middle point. It's meant as a plug for other movies. It's meant as a plug for a villain. It's just kind of like, it would have been I don't know, it feels like homework.
It would have been one shoe.
Yeah. It would have been one shoe.
It would have been one shoe.
They would have all been one shoe.
That's a great way. I love how we now...
We're tuning in the Tommy Two Shoes. Little by little.
Now it's just like, well, you know what the problem with Marvel movies is they're all just one shoes.
They're all just one
and
shoe.
There's a small crew out there who knows what that means. And by the way, I will say, the critics like the second one the best.
Yeah.
But an 87? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
It was a hot garbage. This was, you can't even, Rotten Tomatoes has nothing. They were nothing. They exist for people to shit on.
Right.
Unbelievable. Okay, we're running late here. Vin, do you have anything you want to catch up on? Anything you want to say to all of us? Or,
no, I think
credits?
that's good. Yeah, this ran late, but glad to cover the Ant.
Well, I'm sorry. Yeah,
many ants.
I was a chatty Cathy today. I'm sorry. Vin, thank you so much for sitting through these films here. We'll see you next week. We appreciate it. Folks, we're going to run it down one more time here. We have the Barkleys of Broadway. But that feels like we did that 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
The Barkleys of Broadway with a 76%. Pretty in Pink with a 65. Ant-Man with a 67. Ant-Man and the Wasp with a 34. And Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania with the 44%. Folks, we thank you so much for listening. And we'll see you next week on the Daily Ratings Podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, if you would, could you give us a good rating or tell a friend about us? If you're wondering if a film is worth a watch, or if you just like to see more movie ratings from Vince, be sure to stop by thedailyratings.com, where we have our ever-expanding catalog of films. Also, if you found value in the podcast or our site, become a producer and go to the donations tab on thedailyratings.com. You can donate whatever amount of value you feel you received from us. We're looking to build this into something large and great, but also be independent from those corporate sponsors. So we greatly appreciate any support from you all. So thanks so much, and we'll see you next time on the Daily Ratings Podcast.